Do you remember the song I'm Gonna Get You Sucka back in 1988? It was hilarious. The revenge fantasies, the bold style, and the exaggerated humor that didn't require much thought. But decades later, that joke isn't as good as we'd hoped. In 2026, those familiar faces are carrying lives shaped by loss and silent tragedy. And once you see where they are now, you may never look at the film the same way again. Kenan Ivory Wayans Jongvi Jack Spade. Kenan Ivory Wayans was born on June 8, 1958, in Harlem, New York. At age 30, he played Jack Spade, a sharp, satirical action hero in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka! And this character was both satirical and rebellious, mocking the stereotypes of the blaxploitation genre while reaffirming the power of stories led by black people. For Wayans, Jack Spade was more than just a role. It was a statement of intent, an intent that had been formed long before Hollywood took notice of him. Growing up in a cramped 10-child housing estate, Wayans lived under constant financial pressure and daily racial tension. His parents, Howell and Elvira Wayans, believed education was the only way out, pushing him toward discipline and order. Even while studying engineering at Tuskegee University, his entertainment instincts never faded, quietly leading him to projects like Hollywood Shuffle, 1987, and eventually his own singing career. As his career rapidly advanced, his personal life began to crumble. Wayans married Daphne Polk in 2001, and they had 5 children together: Jolie, Nala, Kenan Jr., Bella, and Daphne. By 2006, the marriage ended in divorce, causing emotional strain and requiring a financial readjustment at a time when he was achieving great success. While the In Living Color program and later Scary Movie expanded his influence, his private world became significantly quieter. That silence deepened as health problems began to surface. Years of creative pressure led to periods of depression, and then he developed type 2 diabetes, forcing him to slow down his work pace. Around 2017, he withdrew from frequent public appearances, choosing to preserve his health rather than appearing too often. The man who once redefined the genre of short comedy now focuses on maintaining his health and balance. By 2026, Wayans will be 68 years old. He worked selectively behind the scenes as a producer and creative consultant, maintaining his influence without the constant public attention. With an estimated net worth of $65 million amassed from television shows, films, and streaming deals, his story ends not with fanfare but with control, having reshaped American comedy and retired in his own way. Bernie Casey as John Slade. Bernie Casey was born on June 8, 1939, in Waco, West Virginia. At age 49, he played John Slade, a seasoned action hero, in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka! His presence brought depth to the film, making the satirical story more authentic, based on life experience rather than exaggeration. John Slade was like a quiet echo of a long journey. That journey began far from the film set. Growing up in coal mining communities with his parents, Frank and Flossie Casey, Bernie learned resilience through hardship and racial barriers. Poverty demanded discipline, and sports became both an escape and a burden. His youthful physical challenges were later portrayed on screen in films such as Brian's Song, 1971, and Cleopatra Jones, 1973, where strength concealed a certain restraint. Success never brought stability to his family. Casey married Paula Casey, but the marriage ended in divorce, and he had no children. Throughout his acting career, with roles in Never Say Never Again and Revenge of the Nerds, he chose privacy over fame. Painting and poetry gradually replaced public life as his spiritual anchors. However, time had its own calculations. A stroke severely weakened his health, leading to long-term complications. The physical abilities that had defined him began to decline, narrowing his world and slowing his pace of life. He almost completely withdrew from the spotlight, living quietly with his art. Bernie Casey died on September 19, 2017, at the age of 78 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles from complications of a stroke. With an estimated net worth of $2 million earned from sports, acting, and visual arts, he left a legacy shaped not by fame but by resilience, a life that transitioned from powerful to quiet without ever losing its dignity. Antonio Fargas as Fly Guy. Antonio Fargas was born on August 14, 1946, in New York City. At age 42, he played Fly Guy, a flamboyant street con artist, in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. This role was a loving exaggeration of blaxploitation style, bringing color, humor, and insider authenticity to the satirical film. Fly Guy was more than just a comedic character. He embodies the era that the film both celebrates and destroys. That authenticity stems from life experience. Growing up in Spanish Harlem, one of 11 children of Manuel Fargas and Mildred Bailey, Antonio grew up in an environment of poverty, racial tension, and addiction in his neighborhood. To survive, he needed an emotional shell, and acting became his outlet from the very beginning. Starting with the 1963 film The Cool World. Those formative years shaped the sharp wit he later brought to films like Foxy Brown and Car Wash, where humor often masked deeper anxieties. While his career stabilized, his personal life remained turbulent. Fargas married and divorced twice, ultimately having 2 children from his second marriage, including Justin Fargas, who later became an NFL winger. In the late 1980s, he found a more stable partner in Sandy Reed, although their relationship was severely tested by the 1994 Northridge earthquake, when both feared the other had died. Even in moments of success, instability always lurked. Health became another silent battle. Years of exposure to surrounding addictions eventually led Fargas to alcohol and tobacco addiction, habits stemming from stress rather than abuse. In the 1990 he proactively chose to quit, a turning point that allowed him to continue working steadily on television shows such as Everybody Hates Chris Without Self-Destruction. The recovery process didn't erase the past, but it helped him gain control over what remained. By 2026, Antonio Fargas will be 80 years old. He lives largely away from the spotlight, occasionally acting while managing his real estate investments. With an estimated net worth of $1 million, his legacy is built not only on wealth, but also on resilience, a man who transcended an industry, an era, and himself, leaving an indelible mark on the history of black cinema. Jeanette Dubois as Belle. Jeanette Dubois was born on August 5, 1932, in Brooklyn, New York. At age 56, she played Ma Belle, a powerful, tough, sharp-witted woman who deeply loved her family in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. This role brought emotional depth to the film's satirical narrative. Ma Belle felt authentic because Dubois herself had experienced that strength firsthand. That resilience was forged early on. Growing up in impoverished neighborhoods with hard-working parents, Dubois faced racial barriers and economic pressure. She quickly realized that talent must be accompanied by perseverance. Music and performing became her escape, leading her from the Broadway stage to her early television shows, including Love of Life. By the time she reached the peak of her career, her voice bore the mark of decades of overcoming hardship. Success did not come with simple love. Dubois married Sajit Krishnagupta in 1950, a marriage that ended in divorce in 1958, leaving her to raise their children alone while he built a career in an industry with little protection for black women. She later had a significant relationship with Brock Peters, but never remarried. Choosing independence over compromise, health became the final chapter in her life. In her final years, Dubois remained actively creative, but her health gradually deteriorated. She suffered cardiac arrest, a sudden end that contrasted sharply with the vibrant energy she possessed throughout her life. Even near the end of her life, she remained dedicated to art, community work, and mentoring young artists, refusing to simply pass away. Jeanette Dubois died on February 17, 2020, at the age of 88 in Glendale, California, from cardiac arrest. She was buried privately. Her legacy lives on through television history and the unmistakable voice behind the show Moving On Up. At the time of her death, her estimated net worth was $2 million, earned over decades of acting, music, and voice acting. John Vernon as Mr. Big. John Vernon was born on February 24, 1932, in Zonner, Saskatchewan, Canada. At the age of 56, he played Mr. Big, a calm, confident power broker, in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. This role was successful because Vernon skillfully used irony, subtly mocking the powerful figures he had portrayed for decades. His presence brought authenticity to the parody, making the jokes more effective. Before coming to Hollywood, his life was shaped by movement and instability. Raised by immigrant parents in Canada, Vernon grew up in financially difficult circumstances and frequently moved, learning to adapt from a very young age. That instability spurred him toward discipline rather than rebellion, leading to his success on Canadian television. When he entered American cinema, he possessed both elegance and a dangerous air, which was later clearly demonstrated in films such as Dirty Harry 1009, 171, and The Outlaw Josie Wales, 1976. That foundation formed his most iconic image. Vernon became unforgettable for his role as Dean Wormer in the 1978 film Animal House, a role that solidified his reputation as a classic Hollywood powerful villain. However, even when typecast into one type of role, he continued to work steadily, respected for his talent and reliability. Off-screen, his life was relatively quiet. Vernon married Nancy West, and they had children together, including Kate Vernon, who later followed in her father's footsteps in acting. His family was a strong support system amidst a demanding career, providing the stability he lacked in his childhood. Although their marriage later ended in divorce, he maintained close ties with his children and their creative paths. In his final years, health became his last remaining obstacle. Vernon underwent heart surgery, but complications arose and his body never fully recovered. He passed away on February 1, 2005, in Los Angeles, at the age of 72. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was $2 million, earned through a lifetime of consistent acting career that helped shape villainous and powerful characters in American cinema. Isaac Hayes as Hammer. Isaac Hayes was born on August 20, 1942, in Covington, Tennessee. At age 46, he played Hammer, a fierce and powerful henchman in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka! This role relied on his powerful presence and deep voice, adding depth to the parody of blaxploitation legends. Hammer seemed to be the subtle allusion to Hayes' own legendary status in black popular culture. That authority was forged in hardship. Hayes grew up in abject poverty after losing both parents at a young age and being raised by his grandparents, who worked in the fields to survive. Poverty, racial discrimination, and manual labor forged his resilience, while music became his escape. Self-taught in piano and organ, he gradually found his own path from despair, a journey that later resonated in the emotional depth of albums such as Hot Buttered Soul and Black Moses. Fame came to him, but stability did not. Hayes married 4 times, and his marriage to Mignon Harley from 1973 to 1986 was particularly turbulent, marked by mounting debt and poor financial management. By 1976, the pressure had reached a breaking point, leading to bankruptcy, the loss of his assets, and his future royalties. Even with the historic success of the Oscar-winning theme song for the film Shaft, his private life remained under constant pressure. Health problems further exacerbated those difficulties. Hayes suffered from diabetes and later a stroke, which gradually weakened his health and ability to be independent. These illnesses left him vulnerable in his later years, particularly after his controversial departure from South Park. Isaac Hayes died on August 10, 2008, at the age of 65 in Memphis, Tennessee, after a recurring stroke, collapsing at home after exercising on a treadmill. He is buried at Memorial Park Cemetery in Memphis. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $500,000, a stark contrast to the enormous fortune he once possessed. However, his true legacy lives on in the history of soul music. Damon Wayans as Leonard. Damon Wayans was born on September 4, 1960, in Harlem, New York. At age 28, he played Leonard, the anxious and fast-talking henchman in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. Despite being a supporting character, Leonard brought a tense energy to the show's rhythm, highlighting the comedic instincts based on Wayans' character. It was a glimpse into the comedic tone that would later dominate television, a tone forged in hardship. Born and raised in a large family with 10 siblings, Wayans experienced a difficult childhood marked by poverty, financial pressure, bullying, and a clubfoot that caused him considerable physical pain. Humor became his defense mechanism and identity. Stand-up comedy came naturally to him, opening up opportunities despite repeated rejections. Wayans' career blossomed with the show In Living Color, 1990-1994. He became a breakout star, creating characters like Homie D, clown and redefining the short comedy genre with his siblings. Success continued into film and television, including Major Payne, 1995, and later My Wife and Kids, 2001-2005, proving he could handle both acting and producing roles. Awards and widespread recognition came his way, but the pressure never truly eased. His personal life reflected that intensity. Wayans married Lisa Thorner in 1984, and they have 4 children, Damon Jr., Michael, Karamia, and Kyla. The marriage ended in divorce in 2000, a period of intense emotional tension as fame clashed with family responsibilities. Despite this, he remained deeply concerned about his children's lives, some of whom also entered the entertainment industry. Ultimately, his health forced him to reconsider. In 2014, Wayans was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, leading him to make lifestyle changes and gradually reduce his relentless workload. By 2026, at age 66, he remains actively involved in comedy and television, most recently working with his son. With an estimated net worth of $35 million, his story is a complete journey, from hardship to influence, sustained by resilience, not complacency. Steve James as Kung Fu Joe. Steve James was born on February 19, 1952, in New York City. At the age of 36, he played Kung Fu Joe, the disciplined, cold-blooded fighter, in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. His character brought authenticity to the satirical play through genuine physical prowess, transforming satire into a contrast rather than mockery. Kung Fu Joe reminded the audience that behind the jokes were true warriors. That discipline had been honed from a very young age. Growing up in a creative but financially struggling family, James learned to rely on physical strength for self-defense and identity. Martial arts became both a shield and a solid foundation, even though the physical damage would follow him throughout his life. These foundations directly influenced his acting career, evident in films like American Ninja and the Delta Force, where strength was often used to replace dialogue. As his career was reaching its peak, James found stability in family life. Following his previous marriage, he married Christine Pan James in 1992, and they welcomed their daughter, Debbie. For the first time, he publicly spoke of contentment, envisioning a future beyond supporting roles. It was a brief moment of peace he had waited for decades. That future was abruptly cut short by illness. James was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a rapidly and mercilessly progressive disease. Even as his health declined, he continued to work, completing projects just weeks before his death. The warrior who had endured years of physical hardship now faced an enemy he could not defeat. Steve James died on December 18, 1993, at the age of 41, at his home in Burbank, California. His ashes remain with his family, a private farewell befitting his simple life. With an estimated net worth of $1 million, earned entirely from acting, he leaves behind not fame but respect, a truly powerful fighter, and his passing came too soon. Dawn Lewis, whose real name is Cheryl Dawn Lewis, was born on August 13, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York. At the age of 27, she played Cheryl, a practical, intelligent woman who served as a counterpoint in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. Although her performance was subtle, it brought emotional authenticity to the film's exaggerated world. Cheryl succeeded because Lewis delivered sincerity, not imitation. That sincerity stemmed from discipline. Raised by Carl and Joyce Lewis, immigrants from Guyana, Dawn grew up amidst racial tensions but was still encouraged to excel. Music became her refuge from a very young age. She began singing at age 4 and performing at age 11. That foundation led to her resounding success in the film A Different World, where she not only acted but also helped shape the film by co-writing the classic theme song. As her career flourished, her personal life became increasingly unstable. Lewis married Johnny Newman in 2004, but the relationship ended in divorce just 2 years later. Without children, she poured all her energy into her work, constantly switching between television, stage, and voice acting. Projects like Hangin' with Mr. Cooper and later dramatic roles reflect a career built on adaptability rather than sensationalism. Health never hampered her progress, but maintaining a long-lasting career required innovation. Lewis gradually transitioned into voice acting, where her musical sensibility and vocal control were put to full use. From animation to Broadway and back to television, she avoided burnout by choosing diversity over fame. By 2026, Dawn Lewis will be 65 years old. She continues to work as an actress, singer, and voice actress, most recently known for her role in Star Trek Lower Decks. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, her story is a testament to perseverance. Talent is sustained through discipline, and success is achieved without losing self-respect. Jim Brown as Slammer. Jim Brown was born on February 17, 1936, in St. Simons, Georgia. At the age of 52, he played Slammer, a tough, uncompromising thug, in the 1988 film I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. Despite his brief appearance, this role solidified his reputation and added a strong, authentic satire to the film. Slammer's success stems from the fact that Brown himself symbolizes an era of uncompromising strength. That strength was born in isolation. Brown was largely raised by his grandmother after his father abandoned the family and his mother moved away for work. Poverty and racial discrimination shaped his early years, forcing him to fend for himself long before achieving fame. Sports became his refuge, eventually making him an NFL legend with the Cleveland Browns, while later films like The Dirty Dozen and 3 The Hard Way expanded his dominance on screen. However, success never equated to a peaceful personal life. Brown married Sue Jones in 1959, divorcing her in 1972 after years of conflict, and then married Monique Gunthrope in 1997, with whom he lived until her death. His relationships were often overshadowed by allegations of domestic violence and legal troubles, controversies that complicated his public image and haunted him for decades. Physically, the consequences of a life full of trauma eventually became apparent. Brown struggled with heart disease in his later years, his once invincible body gradually weakening. Although he continued to appear in public and engage in social activism, his health quietly declined, reflecting the long-term cost of a career built on relentless physical exertion. Jim Brown died on May 18, 2023, at the age of 87, at his Los Angeles home from heart-related causes, surrounded by his wife. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $30 million, amassed from football, acting, and business ventures. He left behind a complex legacy, one of unparalleled sporting greatness, cultural influence, and unresolved personal issues.